Hey everyone, I'm David.
And I'm Leo.
And we wanted to take a few minutes to share the story behind the Getting Money Right workshop. How it started, how it's grown, and why it's become such a powerful tool to help people get their finances in order. So let's go back all the way to 2006. My friend, Pastor Leo Sabo, was brought on staff at a growing church to build a one-on-one financial coaching ministry. And if you know Leo, he doesn't do anything halfway. So he spent over 20 hours pouring into each coach, not just on budgeting and debt reduction, but the biblical principles, what it means to be a steward, the heart behind managing it well. And so he continued to refine the process. He poured into them as a mentor. He created tools and resources. And at its peak, Leo had 55 active coaches. In fact, in that 3-year period, Leo trained more than double that number. Anytime that somebody called the church looking for financial help, Leo was able to pair them with a coach. They were able to sit down and work on a budget, put together a debt snowball, and begin a follow-up process. And on the surface, everything looked great. You trained a lot of coaches, the system was working. But Leo began to ask this question, hey, I really want to make sure that we're serving people well. Let's go look at the data. And he said, is it actually working? Well, it turned out that only 10 to 15% of people were truly succeeding long term. And I know that was hard because you loved the process and you loved what you'd been building. So what'd you do next, Leo?
Yeah, it was very disappointing to find that information, but we kind of knew that not everything was working well. So I also found out that other churches at that time were doing similar programs, one-on-one coaching, and some national ministries that were doing it. And I found out they had the same exact turnout, about 10% success. And to be honest, I was not only disappointed, I was frustrated. I said, no, that's not good enough. We need to do better than that. Coaching seems like such an obvious solution at that time. Training enough people well enough, and that should work, right? We have willing participants and willing coaches and everything should work. But the problem wasn't the system, it was the people had reached out in the middle of a crisis. And by the time their appointment came around, the urgency had gone, and so was their motivation. They canceled, they ghosted us, or they came once or twice and then just didn't follow up. Coaches started to be kind of burned out, and the system just wasn't sustainable. Not for our coaches, not for our volunteers, and certainly not for the people we were trying so hard to serve. So I did the only thing that I knew how to do, which is to stay curious and keep asking. Well, if this isn't working, what might work? And what I did is I pulled some of our top volunteers and I began to work through a process of trying to figure out what would work. Could we develop some kind of a class that we can take a bunch of people through? Because the one-on-one just didn't seem to work for us. And around the same time, I connected with other stewardship leaders through the Christian Stewardship Network. Leaders like Dave Briggs and Chris Gallard.
Good friends.
Yes. And Dave was running an 8-week financial workshop that blended biblical teaching with real-life application in a group format. It was similar to what we were developing, and it was working. So I went and visited with Dave, and Dave generously shared his resources, and that became the foundation of what we now call the Getting Money Right workshop.
That's right.
From 2010 on, we've taught the workshop dozens of times. Hundreds of people, if not well over a couple thousand, have gone through it. We've refined it over and over, updating the content, improving the tools, and focusing on making the process much more effective.
That's right. So I joined the ministry in 2009 as a volunteer and began serving in the workshop and other places in stewardship. Then in 2014, Leo brought me on staff as the associate pastor of stewardship ministry, and he entrusted me with leading the workshop. In 2016, just a few years later, we did a rework where we kind of completely rewrote the workshop. We updated all the content and we filmed our first online version and made it available at multiple campuses and churches around the country. So fast forward to 2025, 9 years later, Leo and I said it's time to do another full overhaul. We did new videos, we updated the tools, we went through and refreshed all the slides, new images, new visual dynamics, and we improved all the teaching notes. We redesigned the flow, we upgraded the training, and we made the tools even easier to use. We spent a lot of time on the tools.
Work of love.
It was a work of love, and we did it to serve people. So what's really, really cool is that we saw from that original one-on-one coaching ministry, that 15% success rate, we now have an 80% success rate of people going through the Getting Money Right workshop. So that means that 8 out of 10 people who start the program actually complete it, and they build a budget while they're in the class. They put together a personalized debt snowball while they're in the class. They learn how to manage money through the lens of God's Word together in a community. And the community aspect is so important because discipleship and relationship happening at the same time.
Yeah, it's true discipleship. So the Getting Money Right workshop is a 7-week course designed specifically for churches to help their members honor God, but also gain the confidence of knowing how to manage their money. Each week session is about 90 minutes long and combines expert teaching with hands-on application in that small group setting. Every participant is placed at a round table with 2, maybe 1 trained table leaders, depending on the size. And it creates a welcoming, no judgment environment where they can learn and grow together. There's support, there's camaraderie, there's excitement. Each week builds on the last, teaching biblical principles of stewardship, like God's ownership and the fact that we are God's stewards, and then pairing that with practical tools like budgeting, debt repayment, and saving. By the end of the course, participants walk away with a complete yearly budget based on their real numbers and a debt snowball plan with a clear end date to their debt, and a saving strategy that includes a fully funded emergency fund. These are not only necessary, they're foundational to good financial management.
Yeah, that's right. So what makes the workshop so effective is that format.
Absolutely.
The time of teaching, but also the time of doing it at the table. It's transformative. Participants actually get to apply what they're learning right then and there in the classroom with expert guidance from their table leaders and their peers. People learn from each other. There's even a little bit of peer pressure to follow along and finish the program. There's real relationship that gets built in the class. It's discipleship in action, helping people experience freedom, gain confidence in their finances, while most importantly, depending and trusting on God.
Yes.
For churches, this is a turnkey solution to meet a major discipleship need. Raising up financially faithful believers who understand not just how to manage money, but why, the heart behind it, what it means to be a good steward, and what it means to be a biblical manager of God's resources.
Yeah.
So whether your church is large or small, Getting Money Right literally creates community in the class. It builds trust, it brings real life change, and it's our heartfelt desire that we would see churches across the country able to use this workshop as a discipleship tool to raise up financially faithful believers across the country. Real transformation, real freedom, and real fruit. The numbers confirm it. We do surveys after every class. The numbers are there, but more importantly, so do the stories, the testimonies, and the people whose lives are transformed.
That's right.
So we hope that you'll prayerfully consider using the Getting Money Right workshop as a powerful tool for your church's stewardship ministry. We really appreciate you and love the work that you're doing to build God's kingdom.
Yes. Thank you.